Welcome, everybody, to the Case Notes from the Field Social Work Podcast. My name is Ernesto Bejarano, and I'm the founder of Social Work Mentor, a tool and platform to provide user-friendly, easily accessible tools and resources to social workers and other helping professionals. On this show, we have conversations with professionals from all different areas of the social work profession. The goal of the show is to learn more about the social work journeys of these individuals, learn about the many different opportunities that the profession offers, and hear a diverse array of perspectives from our colleagues. For social work resources and merch just like this, visit socialworkmentor.com or go to solo.to/socialworkmentor or check the link in the description of this show. So here we go, my social work people. Enjoy the show. Hey, everybody. Welcome back once again to the Case Notes from the Field Social Work Podcast. I'm super hyped and excited today for our guest. If you've been watching these, you know that the people that I've interviewed so far have been kind of people that I've known local to me, and I've had a relationship with them. But our guest today is someone that we're just meeting in real life today. We've just kind of known each other digitally a little bit. But it's going to be an interesting conversation because this is an interesting individual, and we've never had any of this conversation before. So that all being said, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to you and let you introduce yourself. Some of you from TikTok may know this gentleman as Mr. Social Worker 12. I forget the Instagram handle, but you'll notice the face, and when he starts talking, you'll recognize the energy, I think. So go ahead and why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, and let's get started.
Absolutely. So first, let me just say thank you so much for this opportunity. I don't discredit it or discount it at all. As a man of faith, I count it all joy. But I am Felix Moore. As I like to say, I'm Felix C. Moore, aka Mr. Social Worker 12. I again just excited to be here tonight and look forward to the dialogue.
All right, awesome. Well, I forgot to tell you this in our little pre-meeting that we just had, but I want to start doing this as part of our show, and just a practice that many of us are familiar with as social workers. So we'll do a little mental health check-in. I think it's important to check in and just make sure that we're in a good place as we start
Absolutely.
things or see where we are. So I'll go ahead and start. At this time, I'm feeling, as I mentioned in the intro, I'm hyped, but I'm also tired, man. It's been a long day. I was in training for a couple days straight. So, when you come back, that work is built up.
Is there. Yeah.
So I'm kind of beat, but I'm also energized, just seeing you and being here with you. So that's my mental health check-in.
All right. So my check-in is I like to tell people that I am a social introvert. And so I am excited. I transitioned, and so I'm in a new sort of arena of social work now, and so I'm not as stressed as I was coming out of Child Protective Services. And so, but today I am definitely in a good space and feel pretty good today.
That's great to hear. I'm glad to hear that. So if you're watching this at home, whenever you're watching, check in with yourself too. And it's always good to be in touch with, how we're feeling. With that being said, we will go ahead and get started now with what you all came here for, and learn about. Do you prefer Felix or Mr. Moore, or what do you prefer?
Felix is fine. Yep. Right. Felix is good.
All right. So Felix, before we get into the TikTok and all the other stuff, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about just your background? And I know just from what I've seen on TikTok, I think you've lived in different regions and maybe worked in different regions, but I don't know. Why don't you go ahead and let us know where you're from?
Absolutely. So if you can't tell by the accent, I am definitely from the South. I am Southern to the core. I was born and raised in Mississippi. My family actually still lives there. I went to college in Alabama, and I have worked in mostly, all Southern states in my career prior to coming to Colorado, where I currently work. And so I come from, and I'm proud to be, I'm a product of a single parent. My mom sent myself, and I have an older sister. She pushed us and sent us off to college, and because she wanted more and wanted better for us. And so she pushed us, and I went off to college at the University of West Alabama, as you can see in the back.
Yeah,
Go
yeah.
Tigers. I am a proud Tiger fan. I'm a 2005 graduate of the University of West Alabama. So my journey into social work actually started when I was a teen. Something that I definitely am not ashamed of, and I think it has made me who I am. So we grew up poor. And I know a lot of people like to say that, but there were just things that we grew up without, and so I just remember one event. I guess I was about 15 or 16 years old, and I came home from school. We came home from school, and our lights were off. And so I just remember sitting that day in the living room, kind of watching my mom try to figure out how we was gonna make this work. We got to get some candles and figure out how we're gonna eat that night. But I just remember sitting there saying, I want to be in a position where I can help families that are in situations like this. I mean, we had Medicaid. We were on, they call it SNAP now, but it was food stamps back then. Matter of fact, it was the paper food stamps. It wasn't even a
Yeah,
card
I
that they
remember
have
that.
now. And so, but I just remember saying I want to be in a position to help. I didn't know it was social work though. I didn't know that's what it was called.
Yeah.
And so I graduated high school, and leaving high school, I actually went to community college first.
So,
And I
but
actually,
I'm sorry to
no,
interrupt.
no, no, you're
I might
good.
interrupt here, but I had a question about just in high school,
Yeah,
because I think a lot of people go through the experience. A lot of social workers have gone through an experience or an upbringing that, those struggles sometimes are what drives them into the profession.
absolutely.
But as you got closer before you left to college in high school, were you able to identify at that time a little more closely, like I want to work with people or be a counselor, or were you still kind of just unaware
I
in high
think
school?
by the time I got to senior year and was graduating, I still hadn't identified it as social work because I don't know that I really knew that term per
Hmm.
se or what it did. But I knew I wanted to be in a position to help.
Right.
Uh, and so that's kind of what I had on my mind was I don't know how I'm gonna do this,
Yep.
but I know that this is what I wanted to do. And I had some great teachers. Now people may not even believe this. I'm gonna tell you something that if I didn't tell you, you wouldn't even believe this.
All right.
I have a GED,
I would not
so
believe that.
people
I
wouldn't
matter of
even
fact,
believe
I
I
don't know if
don't
I
have
believe
high
it.
school diploma. So what?
Even as you're telling me, I don't know if I believe it.
Drop the mic, right? So believe it or not, I had a learning disability. I grew up in a really small
Mm.
town. And anybody that's watching or that knows anything about small towns, a lot of times things are done underhandedly, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
And my mom was a hard worker, but I had a learning disability. And instead of, being offered tutoring and some extra help, they tested me to confirm the learning disability. And at that time, I was placed in special education as opposed to being offered a little bit of help.
Right.
And so my mom, bless her heart, was hardworking. She took the word of these professionals, right?
Hmm.
And she wanted what was best for her son. And so I ended up, and this was part of this kind of helped push me into this position too. And so, long story short, I ended up spending from sixth grade all the way up to 10th grade in special education. Missed a lot of credits, but when I got to 10th grade, I told my mom, I said, I got to come out of here because I'm I'm gonna miss something if I don't get out of this. So I tested out, but I had missed so many credits that by the time I got to my senior year, I did not have enough credits to graduate. And so the only other option was to accept a certificate of completion.
Mm-hmm.
And
I mean,
I
that's
had
a
some
credit
off.
to you. to even have that awareness
Yeah.
in 10th grade, like
Yeah.
I
Like
got more
something
than
is
this.
missing. Yeah.
Yeah,
Something
it's
was
amazing.
definitely missing. I just go back and I remember seeing in the class, I was like, y'all are doing stuff I did in first grade. Y'all don't know, and that's no dig on
Uh-huh.
nobody, but that was me in the moment, recognize I did
Hmm.
not belong here.
Hmm.
But I had some great teachers, Arlene Brass and Suzette Chun, who I, for the rest of my days, will always credit who I am to them.
Hmm.
Pushed me and said, "Go get your GED because you're better than this."
Hmm.
And so I went and earned my GED, and I my mom had to act a donkey for me to take my ACT. They didn't want to allow me to take the ACT, but she had to act a donkey,
Uh-huh.
and so I was able to do that, and that's how I got into college.
Wow, that's I mean,
Yeah.
and it's I know that I'm going to make the assumption that for you working with youth and a lot of other families that have similar
Hmm.
challenges, just having gone through that and having that lived experience
Yeah.
is so helpful. I've had not that story, but similar stories that I've been able to draw upon my own experience
Hmm.
to provide those services. And it's not to say, obviously, that if you haven't lived that experience that you can't
Right.
still help, but it is, there's something to be said for that lived experience. So now you went through that. That's an amazing story, and your mom did what she had to, everyone did what they
Yeah.
had to do to push Mr. Felix forward. So now moving on to the next phase of your social work journey, and maybe this is where the actual social work part of it starts. So
Hmm.
so what happens next in your path here?
So I actually, I went off to college, and another one of those, you wouldn't believe it if I told you. So I didn't even go into social work when I first got to college. I went to community college, and I thought I wanted to own a print shop, and
Wow.
I want to do graphic art and print stuff. So
Huh.
I actually have two associate degrees, one in graphic art communication and the other one in marketing management, because I wanted to just own a print shop and do graphic art.
You had a
Uh,
plan. At least you
yeah,
had a
I had a
plan.
plan. And in social work, that's important. You got to have
Yeah.
a
Oh yeah.
plan.
Yep. That's the first part.
That's the first part. You got to have a plan. And
Uh-huh.
so, as I graduated with my marketing degree, associates in marketing, that little voice reminded me of what I said at 15, 16, that I wanted to be in a position to help people. And so, as I was graduating, that little voice just got louder and louder and louder. And I said, okay, I got to go back to school. And so, I enrolled at the University of West Alabama, and got a band scholarship, went off to the University of West Alabama, earned my social work degree there,
So
and
so
then went
how
to work.
then okay, so how did you, I guess, between your associate degrees and going on to getting your social work degree, when and how did you identify that, okay, social work is actually the thing that's been that voice in my head all this time?
Once
How'd
I
you get
got to
there?
the university, I actually had plans to be a teacher and
Mhm.
enrolled in the College of Education. And so as I was my first semester matriculating, through the College of Education, um, that voice, if you will, is the best way I can describe it. To say this is not it.
Uh-huh.
It's something else. And so I went and spoke with my academic advisor and kind of explained to him, what it is that I was feeling, what kind of where I wanted to go in life. And my academic advisor then enlightened me that, oh, it's social work. And I was like, oh, okay, that's
Yeah.
a world I didn't even know. I was
And
like, well,
once they
that's what I
described
want
it,
to do.
yeah, once they describe it, you're like, oh my God,
Yeah.
that's what it is. Like, because kind of in a similar way, I initially went off to college. I knew my whole life I liked being outdoors. I liked
Hmm.
nature and all that stuff. And so for sure, I knew I was going to be a wildlife major. I wanted to be like a wildlife biologist or something. So I went off to school up in Northern California
Okay.
specifically for that, because they had a good wildlife program. And I got there, and it wasn't, I didn't have no voices in my head about that. It was not what I wanted. But as I was taking some general ed, like
Hmm.
sociology and ethnic studies, I was like, oh, this is feeling more like what I want to do. And
Hmm.
those voices started coming too. And then when I learned about social work, similar to you, that I was like,
Yeah.
oh, I actually though graduated with a sociology degree just because I was
Okay.
already down that path. But I
Hmm.
kind of knew that social work was the profession that I wanted to go into.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, I went in that direction. I took to it like water, so duck to water, so to speak. Had an awesome professor by the name of Dr. Yvonne Woods. And I
Mhm,
love Dr. Woods because she challenged me. And as you know, being, a man,
mhm.
social work and sociology, that field is not really uh, filled with a lot of us, in particular,
Oh yeah.
men of color, even that. But Dr. Wood, she was an African American professor, and she was tough. She was tough, and
Mhm,
it went to a small school, and so when you're at a small school, you can really connect with your professors,
mhm,
and so she really connected with me. At least that's how I felt because I had her my entire 4 years that I was there for various classes,
uh-huh.
and so she was tough, and she just pushed me. And she was like, "You're gonna be the best that come out of here because you're black, you're a man, and you got what it takes to make this happen. And so I'm going to push you." And so
That's
I
awesome.
thank Dr. Yvonne Woods for that.
That is awesome. Yeah, because a lot of the population that we end up working with, is, again, it's not to say that if you don't identify exactly as someone that you're working with that you can't serve them, but
Hmm.
a lot of the young, Latino, African American
Hmm.
youth, or even Vietnamese, where I work, where I live here, it's a similar socioeconomic cultural
Yeah.
experience. And so to be able to identify that as a man, as a
Hmm.
person of color that's working on your case plan, there's something to be said for that. And as you know, and probably people that are watching this know, there's a scarcity in most places of
Absolutely.
men and men of color. So it's definitely valuable to those people that we work with to have that background.
Absolutely. And I think back when I was in Mississippi, I was a social worker for Head Start. And for those of you who don't know what Head Start is, it's basically a preschool for people who are at or below the poverty line. And it prepares them for kindergarten, and they get all kind of resources. But I was working there for Head Start, and one thing that struck me and really let me know that I was doing what I am supposed to do was that the 99% of the student body was African American, and then you had your African American boys. And so it was amazing to them when I walked into the building with my shirt and bow tie on and slacks, and they was like, "Wait, he's not. He works here? Like he really work here?" And so that amazement on those young men's face, and just they would come to my office and just even though they were 4 and 5 years old, they would just be like, "Mr. Moore, what you doing today?"
Yeah.
Can I just come to your office? And just even the parents was like, "You know what, Mr. Moore, I'm so glad that you're here because my son gets to see something other than what the media portrays."
Hmm.
And I knew in that moment that that's who I want to advocate for.
Uh-huh.
That's the population I wanted to be an advocate for because growing up, obviously I had some good role models in my uncles and people in my community and things
Mhm.
like that. But I never had a black male teacher. I never had a black male counselor or school counselor, not even a
Mhm.
black coach,
Uh-huh.
for that matter, when I played sports. And so to be in a position to be that representative, and even when I went into child protective services,
Mhm.
that was one of the things that pushed me into more advocacy for Black and brown families, because we are overrepresented in that system. That's a
Mhm.
whole nother conversation.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
We'll need a part two just for that
Yeah.
conversation,
Hey,
right?
we might have it too,
Right.
because it deserves the conversation. It
Yeah,
deserves. I don't know, those who are in the field, I think, know that, but I don't know just how
right,
much the general public knows that.
right.
And if any general public people were to watch this, I think they might be shocked at just how much the disparity is, and
Yeah.
kind of the reasons behind it and the impact of it and all that stuff. So yeah, but I was gonna say, I mean, yeah, just that connection that you're able to. Oh, I know what I was gonna say, because you mentioned in child protective services and the as you moved into that area, the impact that
Hmm.
you were able to have. And when families are in, have gotten themselves or have gotten it for whatever reason into the system, it's a scary thing. I mean,
Absolutely.
it's horribly scary and unknown for most families who don't know the system. So to be able to connect with someone who kind of looks like them, who
Hmm.
maybe understands not just from the books but from that lived experience again, it doesn't solve all the problems, but I have found that it sometimes makes it easier for those families to navigate.
Absolutely.
Did you or have you found that to be the case?
Yeah, I definitely found that to be one of the biggest things.
Mm.
So I practice child protective services here in Colorado. In Colorado, in the particular area where I lived and practiced, there is a small community of African Americans and Africans and Ethiopians, and it's just a large demographic, right? And so, but we were overrepresented in the system. Although we had this community, we were outnumbered by other races, if you will. But 90% of the people who were having child protective services cases look like me. And so to me, that became distressing, because I'm trying, because,
Mhm.
if I can just be transparent in that moment, in this moment, is that, I can remember sitting in meetings having to explain culture to people with MSWs and
Yeah.
other advanced degrees, and I'm thinking, y'all didn't talk about none of this stuff, you know. Like, I shouldn't have to be explaining culture to you, and that
Uh-huh.
became frustrating, because that's 90% of the referrals. Most of it referred to something that would happen within our culture.
Hmm.
That, yes, it may look like and sound like abuse, but it's culture,
Hmm.
right? And so just
Yeah.
having to explain that, and even I had several instances where, we have to call the family, hey, I'm calling from so and so county, you
Hmm.
got this referral, yada yada yada, and I literally have had families say, are you Black? And I would say yes. And they was like, oh, you come to my house right now, because they have been, as you stated earlier, they're scarred by the system.
Hmm.
And as you know, on my TikTok, you've heard me say, and I will continue to say and advocate this, is that the system is broken. The system needs
Absolutely.
reform.
Absolutely.
I will never say that the system is perfect, although I worked in that system. It's just the truth.
Hmm.
The system is there to help average Joe and average Jane. But the system needs reform, because there are families that are truly hurt as a result of the encounters that they have. And so, one thing I did as a senior lead person when I worked for CPS was just to encourage younger workers, like, let's look at this from another lens. Yes, we got textbook and we got all of this other stuff. Oh, I see my brother is on. I'm sorry. I got distracted.
That's all right.
But but we I wanted them to look at it from a different lens, that we got to look at where this family is. If mom is worried how she's going to feed these 5 children, some stuff just got to be common sense,
Yeah.
and even with schools, because out here our schools were probably 75% of the reporting party.
Mm-hmm.
And so something as simple as, Felix got a hole in his shoe. Go to the shoe closet and get the boy a
Ah,
pair of shoes that you got. Don't call us and
yeah.
make us go interrupt this family. But that's
Mm-hmm.
what happened. And so
Yeah.
those are the things that would frustrate me in the system. And those are
Mm-hmm.
things that I advocated for.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm glad you say that. Just the when we talk about the lens that people have to have in this kind of work, and sometimes it's through no fault of people of their own. People just haven't
Hmm.
had that perspective. They haven't lived that life, and so they do their best. Just as we might not have another person's lens, they sometimes
Hmm.
don't have the lens that we have. But it makes all the difference in the world to a lot of families because example you gave is perfect. That their coat maybe they don't have a heavy
Hmm.
enough coat, or they got a hole in their shoe, or that maybe a couple kids were home left home while the parents
Right.
the mom went to the grocery store. Just those things that yes, they're things that we might want to provide services for and support and
Hmm.
work with the family, but they don't rise to the level of, actually bringing kids and families into the system. Because as we
Right.
know, once they're in,
Oh my
therein
goodness.
lies
It,
the
it's a
problem.
snowball effect.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah.
snowball effect.
And so yeah, but before we continue, I just want to, we have Deidre Lamar who said hello, and
Yep,
I guess your brother.
that's my very good friend.
Brett, Deidre, and Brandon are here. So anyone else, if you're watching this live, either on YouTube or Facebook, I didn't know if this was true because I hadn't done this before, but I guess you can submit a comment or question. And so if you have a question or you'd like Felix to address something, maybe we can get to it. So you can go ahead and submit that. But so getting back to the story, so we kind of got into a whole bunch of stuff, but you got into worked in Colorado. You did child. How
Mhm.
long did you do child protective services,
I
child
did
welfare in
child
Colorado?
protective services for 3 years. Um, I did it for 3 years here in Colorado, and sort of my resume is right out of college. Most new social workers, caseworkers, whatever, maybe start out at residential.
Yeah.
Um, And so I started out in residential, worked my way through residential. And after leaving residential, I went into adult mental health. I
Hmm.
also did foster care, case management. For several years. I even taught school for a few years.
So that
Um,
teaching plan kind of worked its
it's
way in
still, yeah.
there.
It still kind of came into fruition. So I taught school for a few years, and of course I did social work for Head Start. So it's not, they don't really call it school social work, but that's basically what it
Yeah.
is.
Hmm.
And but working closely with families, and then I came into child protective services,
Nice. Nice.
and so I did that for 3 years, and as of 3 weeks, a month ago, I transitioned into school social work. And so I've been doing that now for 3 weeks.
You've taken a nice deep breath from child
Yeah,
welfare, though, I'm
yeah.
sure. Child protective services.
Child welfare can be tough.
Oh yeah.
And as you know, it's one of those things they tell you on day one. If you make it 2 years, you could probably go and do anything in life.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
and so, and what people don't understand, of course, the whole y'all still kids. That's
Yeah.
that
We'll
too is
get to
another
that.
one of those conversations.
Yeah.
Uh,
We'll get to that.
Yeah, but just being in a position, again, just to help families. I believe in helping families.
Hmm.
I think that without the support of a social worker when I was a kid, even though I didn't know that's what it was, without that support, I really don't know where myself and my sister would be,
Hmm.
today,
Hmm.
without that support. Yes, we had family, but we also had that government assistance. We my mom was never investigated for child abuse and neglect, or any of those things. So I wasn't involved in the system that way. But we were on Medicaid, we were on food stamps,
Yeah.
and different things like that. A lot of young people don't know what commodities are, but we went to the armory to pick our commodities up once a month.
Yeah, it makes me think too sometimes, for a lot of people that had that kind of background and a similar kind of background, where just resources were scarce, or for whatever
Hmm.
reason, the socioeconomic realities they caused some struggle. And at any given time, some of those people, and I kind of count myself in this group, that didn't get brought into the system,
Hmm.
by any one little report or one little thing, justified or not. Because I think a report on me probably
Absolutely.
would have been unjustified, but they might have been able to make a case just for
Yep.
reasons of socioeconomic or whatever. And so, it's almost like the luck of the draw sometimes
Yeah.
that you don't get brought into the system. And it's, I sometimes count what they say, count your
Absolutely.
lucky stars that you didn't, for whatever reason, you
Absolutely.
didn't get in.
That
Yeah.
that you know that's so true. And I, when I would interact, and even now as I interact with family, still, I always like to say, I don't have my glasses on tonight, but don't let the glasses and bow tie fool you. I have been here. I've
Uh-huh.
been there. I get it. I understand. And that a part of social work is showing empathy, right?
Hmm.
That's part of what we do.
Hmm.
And so just being able to show that empathy and have that understanding, every household is not perfect, right? And it probably won't ever. Like I tell people, even here in Colorado where I live, I've been in $1 million homes, and
Yeah.
I've
Oh
been
yeah.
in, and this is by no disrespect, $2 homes, right?
Hmm.
And so just because you got $1 million, that does not excuse abuse and neglect happening in your community.
Hmm.
So it crosses all races, all demographics, all educational, all socioeconomic lines. Abuse and neglect can happen to anybody, anywhere, anytime. And so I think as a social worker, even if there's a young social worker watching us tonight, just know that the community that gets involved is wide, it's
Hmm.
big. And so we talked about those lenses. It's just being able to look at things in a different lens, because of course that $1 million person's struggle is different than the $2 person. And again, I
Hmm.
mean that in no disrespect, but just showing the difference.
Right.
That But you still got to be able to go in and know that you're there to protect the child
Uh-huh.
at the end of
Yeah.
the day. I don't care if it's John Elway or if it's John Doe standing in the middle of Colfax. You're
Hmm.
there to help that child.
Yeah, yeah. And that's the thing that we always, ideally, as social workers and child protection social workers specifically, keep that in mind. But that's the message that sometimes gets convoluted, I think, with the public. Like they
Hmm.
have other thoughts about what our kind of prime objective is, and
Right.
they don't quite understand that. And we'll get into that. But I did want to mention a couple of things, but one specifically, because you talked about the young social workers that might be watching this, and whether
Hmm.
it's live tonight or later on down the road they watch this. There's so many lessons that they could pull from your experience, but I think one of them that I identify with too is just, as you get into this field, the opportunity to kind of do different things and work in
Hmm.
different areas. And so, I started in child welfare, but I was able to move into a lot of different things: drug and alcohol prevention, and monitoring contracts, and doing some evaluation, and a whole bunch of different stuff. And it's
Hmm.
all been in social work, but it's just different opportunities. So if you're young in the field, or even not necessarily young, just middle career or mid career or whatever, the opportunity to do so much with social work is out there, even beyond what I think we traditionally think
Absolutely.
about in the private sector, in the business world. There's just, it's almost like you mentioned, whether it's because of your work in child welfare or just the social work skill set in general, we have so much to offer in so many areas that it's kind of like limitless what we as social workers can
Absolutely.
offer. And so so that's and, it's a good kind of background of you and your social work journey and how you got personally and professionally to where you
Mhm.
are. But so now let's get into kind of the reason why I know of you and know you. And so, I think there's a group of individuals, I count myself as one, you for sure, and others on these different social media platforms or wherever that we go there to have fun, but we
Mhm.
also go there, I think, to connect, to build community of social workers, and also some of us to try to offer and provide either perspective on the work or tips and tricks or answer
Mhm.
questions. And so in that way, I kind of found you on TikTok, and that's a place 2 months ago, people might have, or maybe a year ago, people might have said that's just for kids or
Yeah.
dancing around, and we'll get to that dancing part too. But this is, so this is the first time I've tried to do this, but I'm gonna see if I could pull it up. We
All right.
practiced it before this show, but let me see if I can get it. So this is an example of one of the videos, and if you're not on TikTok, I would suggest you go there and follow Mr. Social Worker 12, myself too, if you want to, Social Work
Yes.
Mentor. But we will, let me see if I can get, here we go. All right, let me play an example of what brought me to Mr. Social Worker 12.
This is a first. I've never been called a trafficker before. Girl, don't nobody want them kids. Come on now. This is a first. I've never.
Oh my goodness. It sounds like that we were able to see that. So it's, the opportunity provides itself here on TikTok and other places to be real. People want to, I know you'd mentioned on your TikToks, and I've done it, and a lot of other people, we talk about the flaws of the system. We
Mhm.
talk about the challenges of disproportionality and, all the different bumps in the road that there are when someone's navigating
Absolutely.
the system. But you do, I think, an excellent job of also kind of calling out the other side of the coin
Yeah.
too, and that perception that social workers have sometimes. You kind of put that out there and put that, kind of put people to the fire on those assumptions too. So that attracted me. But I don't know if you want to kind of, you were on TikTok well before
Absolutely.
me. So how did that come about? Just you starting on there and developing what you do on TikTok?
Absolutely. So, as you know, the pandemic hit last year, literally a year ago, just a few days ago, right? And so, my county did, as so many other counties and businesses and agencies did, they sent everybody home.
Mhm.
And so I was sitting at home, and I actually had attempted to get on TikTok earlier, and I just could not figure it out, right? And so as I was home in quarantine, working from home, I figured it out, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna make TikTok. So I just got on. I was like, oh, I'll do some dances or crack some jokes, and so. But then I went back to what I was like, I know social work. I was like, okay, let's make fun of social work, but in a way where I'm educating as well as entertaining.
Mhm.
And so I honestly never got on there thinking I would be to the point that someone would be saying, hey, would you like to come on my show uh, and talk about this, right? I really was doing it because I was home in quarantine
Uh-huh.
during this pandemic, and we were still working, but I was home. And so I started making videos, and they sort of got some traction, and people
Mhm.
started friending me. And, I remember when I had, 100 followers. And then it's like I woke up one day, I had 1,000 followers, and people started, sending me DM messages and was like, oh, you helped me today, or, I
Mhm.
appreciate this, or, hey, my sister has this going on. And so it turned into continuing to kind of talk about what we do as CPS workers, because at the time I was a CPS worker.
Mm-hmm.
And then it got into, okay, what else does social workers do? Because then I started having like students who were either BSW students or MSW students, or people, seniors in high school getting ready to go to college, and was like, hey, can you tell me more about this? And then of course people started interacting, and I would go live, and I would do Monday check-in and Friday roundup, and Thursday, ask a social worker Thursday. And so that just developed, and I think I don't know, I think I got almost 16, might have 16,000 followers now.
Mm-hmm.
And so people look forward to Thursday, ask a social worker Thursday. And
Yeah.
maybe about 3 months ago, I started doing, the mental health break. And so people on my Instagram page, I think I missed like 1 day, 1 week. And I started getting DM messages on Instagram like, hey, I didn't see a
Where you
mental
at?
health break. I was like, oh, wait a minute, people are taking this serious. And so now I have to come up with, those weekly mental health breaks. And so it just really developed into something, me being a man of faith. It just, it was a God thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
He just, I never realized the amount of people that I would help through my entertainment. And really, it was just me trying to get over being bored during quarantine. And it developed into what it is today.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, as I mentioned, that's how I found you. And you would think that, once people sometimes see comments or whatever, I think people have an idea that those comments are just going to be just kind of trivial or not that
Yeah.
important. But when you go into the comments, it really is people, even within, like, you post a video, there's
Hmm.
comments, and within those comments, it's like a community is built
Yeah.
for that particular video. And then you post another one, and it's a different set of people building community around that topic or whatever. And so it's amazing to me
It
how
really is.
these platforms, and then once you start having, I had one video so far that had, I don't know, it's like 45,000 or something, which for
Hmm.
me is huge. But when I woke up one morning and I started seeing all these little red signs on my phone, I was like, man, there's people that really connect, because they
Yeah.
were asking questions and kind of going back and forth with each other and supporting each other. So
Right.
it's just amazing what's possible on those platforms. And like you said, I think your way of doing it is exactly, what makes it accessible for people, because some of it is fun. It's a nice
Right.
little dance, or it's you got a little joke or whatever. Some of it is really, I know you had during Black History Month, there was a lot of
Hmm.
stuff that's really educational, and it's just the possibilities again are endless. And I think that only is going to continue to grow. I mean, I see in your
Absolutely.
channel growing and growing.
Absolutely. And just kind of what we're talking about, just building community. I was so shocked at the amount of social workers, right? I
Hmm.
had, after been on a while, I had heard of, teachers of TikTok or educators of TikTok and different things. And so all of a sudden, here comes the social workers of TikTok, and,
Uh-huh.
connecting with, therapists and counselors and other CPS workers and other
Mhm.
social workers who have been, able to bring light to what different we do. Because normally when you hear a social worker, people
Mhm.
automatically assume you are child protective services,
Mhm.
automatically. I was like, no, that's not all we do. We do more than that.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
But just being able to connect with other social workers and building really a strong community. And so, and being able to bounce ideas, and because a lot of times I'll post a video and I'll give a response, and I'll say, well, hopefully some of my other
Mhm.
social work friends will chime in. And so
Oh,
then
yeah.
you see people come out of the woodwork. It's like, oh yeah, so in my state we do this, that, and the third. And
Yeah.
it's so crazy. I've connected with people from the United Kingdom, people from Canada,
Mhm.
and it's just been crazy that somebody. I listen. So I grew up in this little town called Philadelphia, Mississippi. Most people, if I just say Philadelphia, will automatically assume Pennsylvania. automatically. And I was like, not with this accent am I from Pennsylvania, right? Uh, but I grew up in a little town, Philadelphia, Mississippi, and to know that somebody in Canada or in the United Kingdom knows Mr. Social Worker 12
Mm-hmm.
and will send me a DM like, hey, this is what's going on at my friend's house. You got any advice? Just I think yesterday you and I both responded to a video of a young lady who scored an intern that she was excited
Oh yeah.
about and who was asking for tips. And so just being able to give that
Mm-hmm.
that sort of advice and encouragement, and also just be honest, like, hey, this work is tough,
Mm-hmm.
but you can do it if this is what you want to do. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's to two of your points. Number one, when the social work mentor, some people might be watching this on that page. And so at some point about 10 years ago, I just wanted to create like a online resource for social workers to find, resources they could use in the field. And it was mostly meant for like my friends and colleagues where I work.
Right.
But I put it out there and I kind of didn't even think about it. And then I started looking at this little thing that you can see where the pages or page
Mhm.
visits are coming from. And I started seeing people from, like you said, New Zealand and
Right.
Hong Kong and all over the world. And I'm like, and they weren't just one page, they were like visiting the site
Right.
first. So I was like, man, this technology, like there's opportunity to help people to connect.
Yeah.
And then, like you say, on the social media platforms, it's totally like, you know, especially for younger people, that who
Mhm.
have questions or are interested in the field, because that's a problem that, as a profession, we have kind of attracting people into the field. The pool of social workers is
Mhm.
not necessarily not big enough
No.
sometimes for the need is, and then
Right.
keeping them there, kind of building that support so that we can feel supported and have community to kind of stay in the field, because it is very difficult. um,
Absolutely.
so yeah, so the other thing, I was going to say one other thing about TikTok. I can't think of it, but so you and I are, you obviously do your thing, and I'm just trying to follow your lead in many ways. But there's other people that are
Yeah.
kind of bringing their own little flavor to the social work
Absolutely.
TikTok. And one of them, her name's Brittany Williams. I think
Mhm.
in 2 weeks, I believe, I'll be interviewing her, because she has, I had kind of heard of it a little bit before, but not that much. But she does hip hop therapy. And
Mhm.
so, as I was watching her, she started popping up on my TikTok, and it's
Right.
very interesting. And we'll be able to hear that perspective. And
I'm
she's out
definitely
there.
excited about that one. I'll be tuning in for that one.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's just amazing what we're able to do on these platforms. Um, the other thing, we kind of covered it already, but I also just did. I was hoping maybe you go a little bit more, because not only it's not all rainbows and unicorns. It's not
Absolutely.
all. We get, or you more than I get a few. You, I see, get a lot of these individuals from the public who have,
Yeah, they
maybe
like
they've
to
had a
come
bad
for me.
experience with the system, or they, whatever thought they have in their mind of social
Yeah.
work, they kind of put it out there. And that's kind of that one little clip that we showed. So how have you thought about that, responding to those? And
Mhm.
also, we're, professionally, we have jobs, and we also
Right.
need to maintain a level of professionalism, or
Right.
some level of boundary, because our jobs may or may not be supportive of what we do. So how have you kind of navigated through that
So
aspect?
it has definitely been a thin line. Of course, when I first started, really TikTok was during quarantine. That's when TikTok really blew up, and so it was really easy to go viral. And so at that time, I really didn't know how to control who saw what and what went where. But I actually had a incident where I was, called in, and sort of reprimanded, if you will, by one of my earlier videos, that actually I had to delete as a condition of employment. And so it's been a thin line. But so when what I like to do is I want to make sure that I respond to people. I don't really want people to have an assumption, because we all know what happens when you make assumptions. And so I want to be able to give an answer, but I also want to sort of like the old Mary Poppins song, "A spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down." And so I want to be respectful, and I want to validate what they feel. And that's something that, I will always do through my social media platform, as Mr. Social Worker, is to validate. I understand and I empathize with how you're feeling, but I also want you to know the truth. I want you to know that we don't steal children. I want you to know that there has to be a court order in order for these things to happen. Or I want you to know, that there are resources available if you want them, right? And so I just want to give that little bit of spoonful of sugar for the medicine. And so just walking that thin line of maintaining professionalism, but at the same time, just kind of being who I am, and keeping my originality, if you will. And so I would even say to the younger social work TikTokers that may watch and may post a video, there's a thin line. Be who you are, but also know your company's social media policy. Thankfully, I didn't violate any social media policies with my stint, but it was more so of just the perception. And so just being able to understand and knowing what that is. But I'm going to give you a response. You may not necessarily like my answer, but just like I said in the video, don't nobody want your kids. We don't want them. We ain't got no,
That's really, that's a good thing, right? Like,
yeah.
it sounds funny, and it, it is funny, and we thank you, or I thank you as a child welfare social worker, but that's a good thing, right? We don't want your kids in the system. We want
We
them to
don't.
be with you where they belong. And
Absolutely.
we want
Absolutely.
you to be able to provide them with the safety and well-being that they deserve. So it's said, like, exactly like you're saying, a spoonful of sugar, it's funny and it's entertaining, but it's true, and in a good way. It's, the message behind it that I take is that, this is about you making sure that
Yeah.
you're able to keep your kids with you. It's not that we don't want them, it's that we
Right.
want them with you. I mean, we don't want them too,
Right. And and a lot of times,
but
just talking about comments, they'll make a statement and it's like, wait, you can't be telling us the whole story, because that's not adding up. Because if
yeah,
policy and procedure, like, these things aren't adding up.
something's
You're
missing.
leaving something out. And so I'm that guy to point it out, like, no, that don't sound like the whole story. So
Uh-huh.
let's talk a little bit more about it. But I also want to be able to, just to provide. I talk a lot about self-care, in my videos, and that's important, as I think in any profession, but certainly those that are in child protective service, social work, period. I had a conversation with a friend just a week ago, and talk about so many times we as social workers have to validate other people's feelings, and there are just days we want to be validated. And so just being able to be in that position to validate how somebody feel, but to also educate them at the same time.
Yeah, and the point that you made about knowing the social media policy and knowing that, like, that's super important. Again, especially for, or I guess not, but especially but for anybody who's doing social media and it's, around the profession, around social work, you do want to be careful, because it's the profession, or many organizations that I've seen, are kind of behind on their policies. Like, they may not even have a policy in place.
Right.
And so it could be kind of subjective, and they might kind of call you out on something that you were never given that expectation up front. So you do want to be careful with that, but also, be yourself and be genuine. Because for me, if I was the head of an organization or whatever, I see people like yourself and others as kind of ambassadors to the profession. Like, we're out there making it real, making it tangible, and not kind of demystifying it, both for the public
Absolutely.
and for potential future colleagues or current colleagues. And so it's a it's kind of a gray area right now, but
Yeah.
as long as you're careful, as long as you're responsible, as long as you maintain, going by the code of ethics, NASW code
Hmm.
of ethics, if we follow those things pretty closely, I think we'll be all right. And there's
Absolutely.
so much potential when we do that. Um, Now, and the other thing about self-care, I think, is that's a huge thing that social workers, I think, have been able to, it's a buzzword, I think, a
Yeah.
lot of times in
Yeah.
organizations, like here's a PowerPoint, here's a webinar, okay, and self-care is covered, check the box. But
Boom.
really,
Yeah.
yeah, I've seen that we on these platforms are kind of able to be more specific, more genuine about what does it really look like? What is self-care? Let's call it out. First of all, call out
Hmm.
those discrepancies in what an organization is saying about self-care and what it really looks like. But let's also, provide different provide support to each other about how we can really implement some self-care
Right.
strategies into our lives and into our
And
professions.
and I can guarantee you, without it, you will burn out in this
Oh yeah.
profession.
Yeah.
Without self care, and I think and self awareness. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I think goes hand in hand with self care and knowing when you're at a point. So we talked about this earlier. I've transitioned from Child Protective Services, and that was because I was able to recognize that I was there. I
Mm-hmm.
had physically started to get sick, and so it was just time to bow out.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard. I've talked to many child protective social workers who have been able to transition from that particular field. One of the hardest things to do is to walk away from your families.
Mm-hmm.
As many
Oh yeah.
jokes as we crack or whatever, our families mean everything to us
Mm-hmm.
because they're there for a reason, right? And so a lot of times we will guilt ourselves into staying, and we become more bitter and more angry. And that leads to you forgetting things. That leads to you really making some mistakes that could cost a life, for
Totally.
lack,
Yeah.
period.
Literally.
I used to tell people all the time, I make life and death decisions every day,
Mm-hmm.
and so you want to make sure that you put yourself in the best possible position to be successful.
Yeah.
That's whether you're working at a nursing home, whether you're at the hospital, or at the school. And like as you say, social workers can get a job anywhere.
Yeah.
We can get a
We
job
really
anywhere
can.
because we're needed.
Mm-hmm.
But also, again, just having some self awareness as well as knowing your self care. And that's some advice that I always give. Even on TikTok, people say, well, what are some advice? I'm going into the field. First, know who you are, know your biases, know the things that make you tick, right? Know the things that you feel some type of way about, as the young people say today, and also know what self care looks like. Know how to say no, and know how to separate work from your personal life. So all those things are just key, I think, in
Yeah.
any profession. But we're talking about social work, so those things are paramount in what we do.
Yeah, and in a lot of the social workers that I've talked to, that are mostly the ones that are kind of up and coming, a challenge that they have always expressed to me is just how to prioritize the things that come at them, because you're sitting there, you're writing a court report, you got to put in some contact notes, and then here comes, you got that red light flashing on your phone, and
Right.
you know what's there, and then here comes your supervisor, they need to meet with you, and it's just a never ending flood of things coming your way, and not all of them, in my experience, are either a crisis or urgent, or B, your responsibility. And so I'm actually right now developing a course that kind of
Okay.
will provide some tools, hopefully, to help social workers do that. But like you said, unless you develop these strategies for survival, whether it's being intentional about your self-care and intentionally scheduling it and setting aside time, or whether it's developing a system to prioritize all the stuff that comes at you, if you don't do that and you just kind of go where the wind takes you, you can really
You'll
burn out
crash and burn.
quickly. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's
Absolutely.
important. So I want to we've been going for about an hour. I know we have a whole bunch of stuff that we haven't really gotten too much into men in social work, men of
Oh,
color in social work.
absolutely. That
There's so
that's a
much.
part two. Obviously, we can talk about it, but just being a man and just one thing I have found, and I think I maybe like tapped on it just a little bit. Being a man in this profession has its challenges,
Mhm.
and then you add being a man of color has its challenges. I can be honest and transparent in this moment. In my last position, um, I was the angry black man. And it wasn't that I was angry. I just believe in advocating. I believe in expressing myself. Because I think it's another important thing, just knowing about yourself. So I have been diagnosed with general anxiety. So I have an official diagnosis, and so it didn't really take a whole lot for that to kick in, right? For those who know anything about anxiety. And so for me, one thing that I've learned to control that is that to be able to express myself, and that helps me not become anxious if I'm able to verbalize what I'm feeling in that moment. And so
Mhm.
it was easy to be the angry black man because I was literally the only black man,
Uh-huh.
out of 80 caseworkers. And so my advocating was known to be complaining, but I
And
really
that's a
was just
hard.
advocating, and
Yeah.
so that's a challenge. We are in a female dominated field, and so
Mhm.
we have to even walk a thin line. And what people don't understand is sometimes it was like you're in my situation where I was literally I wasn't the only man, but I was the only black man. There were two other guys, but we were so spread out, right? And so you don't have that person to talk to. You don't have that outlet to kind of express how you feel that day. And so we're supposed to always be strong. We're supposed to always be on, but we have our own struggles. And a lot of times, just even the frustration of being the only black man. A lot of times, my colleagues will come to me and say, "Oh, Felix, can you come talk to this teen? Can you come talk to this?" They would be a family of color or a person of color. And I was like, wait, we all got the same degree. You supposed to know how to talk to these people too. Uh, but and that, like I said,
I
we're
mean, on,
just
on the flip side, do you take them with you when you go see families that look
period.
like them?
No, no. None of my coworkers was there. In the house where I was called racial slurs, or
Uh-huh.
the door slammed in my face because this 6 feet tall, 280-pound black man was knocking on their door.
Mhm.
During the George Floyd portion of our lives,
Mhm.
we had some of our upper management and others sent out statements, if you will. And I had coworkers offer, oh, I'll ride with you if there's ever this and there's ever that. And I'm thinking, what? I don't want to get into all that.
Yeah, that's the part. That's for part two. Also, we'll
That's
save.
part two,
We'll
but
save that.
it's a struggle being a man of color. And again, you would know this,
Mhm.
but just being a man and being a man of color in this field, a lot of times we're looked over. I don't have a problem saying, I attempted to get into upper management several times over the last 3 years once I became eligible, because there was an eligibility period, and I never broke that ceiling, never got through that, and that was frustrating to
Mhm.
me.
Yeah.
And so those are things that even for the men of color that may watch this video at some point, watch this show at some point, that's just things you have to consider if this is what you choose to do in life.
Yeah. I think that's that it's a heavy load to carry. Just a
Yeah.
male in social work and a man of color in social work. And I think that as we're talking about this, I mean, this is like another show, or at least a support group or something, because
Right.
these experiences, there's not really space in, at least my professional experience, there hasn't often been space for us to come together, and we've kind
Mhm.
of created our own little social social coffee groups or whatever of a couple of guys that might go
Hmm.
and have some conversation, but it's not institutionalized, and therefore
Right.
we're carrying this. And I actually made a back to TikTok. I made a TikTok recently, because this is how it kind of manifests itself in real life sometimes, is that, I sometimes, as male social workers, if we're alone, maybe transporting a female client or
Yep.
something, like
That's
we have
that's
to
a
be,
challenge in and of itself.
yeah, we have to be
Yeah.
very careful and make sure that, everything is nice and clean, because we don't want
Right.
any misunderstandings between what we may say or how we
Yep.
may act, and so that's clear, and that's a challenge in and of itself. But so I was at my daughter's softball practice, just watching practice, and all girls school,
Hmm.
obviously there's a girls team, so it was all girls on the softball team, and there was a woman parked next to me, and I'm quite sure that she wasn't thinking anything about this, but in my mind,
Yeah.
felt I can't be looking at these all girls on this
Right.
team. They're gonna think that I'm have inappropriate thoughts or something.
Hmm.
It's zooming back out. It doesn't seem very realistic, but it is kind of that, almost like a PTSD or some level of trauma,
Absolutely.
having to always be careful as a male social worker, and then worrying about what the perception is of you when you're
Yeah.
just out in the real world doing normal stuff. So it's
Absolutely.
heavy. Um,
I think about, the time, of course, in our profession, we're required, well, at least here in Colorado, we were required to speak with children alone, away from parents.
yeah.
And a lot of times I couldn't do that. And
Hmm.
a lot of times I didn't
Yeah.
do it, because the child would be a female child, or even a young child, could be a young
Hmm.
male child. And
Hmm.
I would always ask the school social worker, or if they, hey, are you okay with your mom or dad or big brother being in the room?
Hmm.
Because those are things we have to think about,
Yep.
right? Because all it takes is that one time, right?
Hmm.
For something to be misconstrued, a statement or a pat on the shoulder.
Yeah.
Even when it comes to our colleagues, a pat on the shoulder, or
Hmm.
just whatever the case may be. And so,
Hmm.
we have those struggles as men in the profession, and I would hope, and I would definitely like to see, more intentional training, or intentional addressing, that particular issue, because I mean, we're here and we're here to
Hmm.
stay. So
Yeah. And I feel like sometimes it's kind of perceived as kind of diminishing or minimizing the work and the value and
yeah,
importance of our female colleagues, but in no way, shape, or form is that where I'm coming from.
right,
To think about or advocate for or express some of these things as a male social worker is just that's just what it is. It's just this experience. It's not to in any way to be compared to or diminish the
absolutely.
equally important and difficult challenges that female social workers have. And so I mean, this is ripe for another
It's just good to be able to
conversation.
talk to another man that's in the profession. Let me just say that.
That's true. Yep, 100% for sure. um so yeah, so I want to touch on so much other stuff. The point you made about being passed over and trying to move up and a lot of stuff, but I do want to be respectful of time and make sure that we leave enough for a potential episode 2 down
Absolutely.
the road. So
Absolutely.
so before we kind of cut it off here, I wanted to make sure I give you an opportunity to share any kind of last thoughts you want to share, or anything you're working on, or any websites or thing you'd like people to check you out on.
Absolutely. So again, let me just say thank you. Right, I am so appreciative, and this is one of those moments that I wish my I'm gonna try not to. This is one of those moments I wish my mom was here to see, because these are the things that she wished and prayed, for the type of success, right? And so, I am just thankful for that. I just listen. Follow me on TikTok at Mr. Social Worker 12. I promise you will be entertained and educated. You can also follow me on Instagram at Blue Soul 12. BLUSOUL and the number 12. You can find me there on Instagram as well. I'm so excited. You can also purchase Mr. Social Worker 12 gear on Amazon. .com or Amazon merch. I have some t-shirts there. I'm working on some new t-shirts. I actually have one of my shirts on tonight that it will be available
Nice.
on Amazon really soon. And so you can check me out on Amazon and again purchase Mr. Social Worker 12 gear there. They will actually ship it straight to your house. And so if you got Prime, you can get it in 2 days or a day, depending on where you live at. And so I'm excited about that. Future wise or future forward, I'm looking forward to more engagement with my TikTok community, and we'll just kind of see where Mr. Social Worker 12 goes from here.
Yeah, it's, I mean, I know I'll be there following along, and I want to, you know, also just, pay, I want to put out my respect to your mom too, wherever she may be. She's obviously has did her work to create a fine man, and a real man that's here making a difference in the world in many different ways. So thank your mom, and thank you for being on this show as my brother, my fellow
Absolutely.
male man of color social worker. Um, I'll put, after this show, after we wrap up here, you can send me the links and I'll attach them to this
Absolutely.
video for anything you want. Or you could go to socialworkmentor.com or the other links for my stuff, and I'll be connecting with Felix's stuff as well. So thank you again, Mr. Social Worker 12, Felix, for coming on for episode 1 or chapter 1 here with
Right.
you. And as I mentioned, in the next couple of weeks, we'll have Miss Brittany Williams coming on to talk about hip hop therapy and a number of other stuff. She's also on TikTok. So thank you
Mhm.
everyone for watching or listening if you're on the podcast version. And I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Thanks everyone, and
Bye,
and
everybody.
have a good one. Bye bye. Let me make sure we get out of here in the right way, and we'll see you next time.